Hello, my name is Shira Levy. I'm here today with Amy Tattrie, who is going to speak about her journey overcoming substance abuse. She's going to talk about how that journey began, what it was like going through that journey, support systems, lack of support systems, as well as her advice and wisdom on this topic. This is Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy.
I wanted to start off by just asking you where you're from, where you were raised, where you grew up, and everything like that.
Yep, I was born and raised in Brockton.
Okay.
And then about 10 years ago, I left and went to Boston and lived in Rosendale for a few years, and now I'm back in Brockton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just get right into it. Why did you begin taking pills?
Yep, so I remember going in about junior high, I started, using drugs and alcohol with friends, and it wasn't like that bad. I was able to hold a job and I graduated high school. But when I was 18, I gave birth to my first son, and I left the hospital with a bottle of Percocets. And when those were gone, I started reaching out to friends on the streets and buying them on the streets, because it made me feel like I was a better mom, as crazy as that sounds. I was able to clean the house and do all this. I had all this energy, and it turned really bad. And then 3 years went by, and I was pregnant with my second son. And my addiction was so bad then that I used my whole pregnancy with him. And I have a lot of guilt and shame regarding that. But luckily, he's healthy. Sorry, I stopped.
You were speaking about your two sons?
Yep. So I was using my whole pregnancy with my second son. And after I had him, I had untreated postpartum depression, and my addiction got out of control. I started spiraling, and I went to my detox for the first time in 2010, and I missed his first birthday, which was really, really sad. And I remember being in that detox, and everyone was doing all these harder drugs than me, and I was like, I'm taking pills, I'm not as bad as these people. And they're like, you really should go to further treatment. I'm like, nope, I'm gonna be fine. And I was back there a month later, sticking a needle in my arm, shooting heroin. So that just a month of pills into shooting heroin from one detox. So that started a long journey of 30 detoxes, 7 halfway houses. I overdosed 3 times. I sectioned myself to Framingham prison for 30 days. I tried Suboxone and methadone and Vivitrol and IOP and AA and NA, and I've done all that. And then I found out I was pregnant with my third child, which was my daughter, in 2013. And when I found out I was pregnant with her, I walked into BMC and I said, I'm a heroin addict and I'm pregnant and I need help. And they saved my life. Unfortunately, I didn't get clean until I was about 5 months pregnant with her. But I did, and the last time I used, and my clean date is September 16th, 2013. So actually this year I'll have 10 years clean.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I ended up working in the field, and in around 2016 I got my first job working in a detox, and then the same year I became a recovery coach. And now I work with a company called Compass, and I was a client of theirs in 2014. So it's kind of like full circle, but that's a little gist of it.
Yeah, I was about to ask about that full circle moment. Mm-hmm. One, would you say a lot of recovering addicts do have that full circle moment, and what that feels like?
Unfortunately, the statistics for drug addicts and alcoholics are really bad. A lot of us don't make it out. I have a lot of people that I've lost, and I almost lost my life a few times, but I think one of the morals of my story is never giving up. I didn't know that the 30th time I went to detox was going to be the last detox for me. So,
could you describe what detox is in more detail? Yep.
So typically, you can go to a hospital and they can help you, or you can call from home. Detox is like a 4 to 7 day process where they give you medication so you're comfortable in withdrawing from drugs or alcohol. And then they have further treatment, which is anywhere from a 30-day program to a 6-month halfway house. And then it's a lifelong battle after that, therapy and just, coping mechanisms and things like that, so.
Did you go to therapy throughout the whole process?
I didn't. I started going to therapy this last time around. So I've been going to therapy for 10 years. but it was something I hadn't tried before.
Did you want to try it and something was stopping you, or?
I just didn't think I was ready. I think all those
Okay.
times I just wasn't ready. I was, a lot of the times we get clean for other people. I'm going to get clean because my kids need me to get clean. I'm going to clean because my parents want to get me to get clean. And eventually, I think you just have to want it. And not saying that people that don't get clean don't want it, because it's a struggle. It's one of the hardest things I ever did was get clean. Addiction is so strong that the love of my children that I have for my children was not strong enough to stop me. That's how strong it is.
What would you say, for example, there are people who drink on some weekends, smoke weed, maybe do some of the harder drugs once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think made you continue on that path and others do it once in a while?
I think that, there's evidence that shows that, addiction is a disease, and I was one of those people that were like, it's not, I chose to do this. But it's so much deeper than that. I think a lot of drug addicts and alcoholics, we have untreated mental health. So some people can drink and drug because they do it for fun. We do it because our brains are designed different, and we literally can't live without it. It's one of those things that, like I said, like the love for your children is so strong, but that wasn't enough to stop me. It's an obsession that I couldn't even describe to you. And some people can smoke weed or do drugs on the weekend, but drug addicts, we just, once we picked up, that was it. We don't have a choice. We use it against our own will.
Were there any misconceptions or stereotypes that you feel were more harmful than helpful?
Addiction is not a one-size-fits-all. We all do end up in the same, shame and guilt and hating ourselves, but how we get there is different. I remember in the beginning, people would say, you got to go to AA, you got to do the steps, you got to get a sponsor, and not saying that those things don't work, but they don't work for everybody. And I think that's setting people up for failure when you say, if you don't do this, you're not going to get or stay clean. And people did that to me. But I also think that people shouldn't give up and they should try everything. Like I said, I literally tried everything. And what works for somebody might not work for another, but it's their journey, and they should get to decide how they want to do that. And if some people, I know some people like smoke weed and they're able to do that and not do other drugs, and if that works for them, I don't think people should tell them that they're not clean and sober, because if they're not doing their drug of choice, then they're clean and sober from their drug of choice. I choose to be fully absent. I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't do anything, because I'm too scared to, so I won't even take a sip of alcohol. But some people can. Some people can be clean from drugs and drink. I just choose not to. But, yeah.
I was wondering how drugs and alcohol affected your home life.
I actually remember before I went to my first detox, I called my dad. He was the first person I called to say, I have a problem, I'm a heroin addict and I need help, because he was an alcoholic and he was in sobriety. And he showed me the ropes. He helped me get on my first detox and was taking me to AA meetings and all that. And that's where I'd meet people. And I got into that whole, like, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I remember feeling so, like, overwhelmed with, I'm just trying to make it through the day. And you're telling me I have to call a sponsor every day and I have to do the 12 steps and I have to help people. And it was really scary. But then again, there's thousands of people that go to AA that tell you that it works and they're sober. So it's hard, because you meet these people and they've been clean and sober for so long, and you see something that you want and you want to do it, so you want to copy them. And but like I said, not everything works for everybody. So my suggestion would be for everyone just to try everything, because you'll find your own formula. And what worked for me was therapy and going to recovery centers, because when you go to AA, people get up at a podium and they share their story. At recovery centers, it's more of like a group thing where you can sit at a table and do have resources, and you sit in a group, and it's smaller and it's more personal. So that's what worked for me.
What made you, other than just saying don't give up, what made you want to go back, like the 29th time? What made you think that one of these times will work?
I just had hope. Every time I went to detox, my runs, meaning the time I spent out there on the streets, got shorter and shorter. I know that when I started going to detox, it kind of ruined getting high for me, because I knew that I didn't have to live like that. I knew that there was places that I could go to get help. So it was kind of like, what am I doing? I'd have these feelings of, why am I out here? What am I doing? So, I kept going. But, I hurt my whole family. I didn't see my kids for 3 years. My parents didn't trust me. They took me in so many times, and I'll never forget one time I was living with my dad, and I got high, and he had to change the locks because, you know, my little brother lived there. He had to protect my little brother. And even a year into recovery, I'll never forget, I went shopping, and I was taking long, and my mom's like, "Are you okay? Like, is something wrong?" And I'm getting so mad, like, "How dare you accuse me? I'm over a year clean." But, you know, I instilled that fear into my mother. I created that mistrust in her, and I had, you know, just because I was feeling better doesn't mean that I have to put a timeline on when my family should be okay with everything. You know, you can't tell somebody to forgive somebody. They have to do it in their own time. But, you know, now my whole family is great, and I'm invited to things again. And, you know, for a long time I didn't even go to family functions. I was so ashamed of who I was. But they all treat me the same. You know, they're all fine now. But I was terrified of everybody, of what they would think of me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you think that going through your journey gave you more appreciation for life now that you're recovered?
Oh yeah, I mean, I have an appreciation for the small things for sure, but I had a lot of things that I lost. You know, I lost my kids, I lost my apartment, I lost my car, I lost my job, and getting all those things back, I'm not willing to lose those things today. You know, and I am so grateful to be alive, and I have my kids in my life. You know, and that's the blessing. Is when I had my daughter, I never thought she'd meet her brothers because I hadn't seen them in 3 years. You know, and she doesn't even know her life without them. So, I mean, I did make the decision to continue allowing my children to live with their father because I didn't feel like I had the right to come back in their life and disrupt it again and say, "Okay, Mom's better now, so I'm just going to remove you from the home that you've had for the last 3 years." So that was one of the hardest decisions I have ever made, was continuing to let them live with their dad because he did a great job. When I wasn't there, he was mommy and dad, you know, and he did an incredible job. They're such amazing kids. But even when I started visiting with them, I know my kid's father had his bedroom locked and he had cameras in the house. And now, like, he's not even there when I go visit my kids. So that's amazing seeing how things change and how people can just kind of, you know, welcome you again. And you just feel so bad about yourself, but you don't feel bad when people start forgiving you and trusting you again. It's a great feeling.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How is it how have you implemented what you've learned throughout your journey in raising your children now? If you have.
I haven't really, so I have an 18, so my oldest is 18, I have a 13-year-old, and then my daughter's 9. I know my boys know what happened, what went wrong, and even getting them back in my life was kind of not uncomfortable to be around them, but it was weird because I didn't know who they were, they didn't know who I was, and it was kind of like a learning journey for us. But my daughter kind of has an idea of what's going on. I know she's young, but she's heard me talk. She knows that I help people, and she doesn't know that I was a heroin addict, but she knows that Mommy had an issue with alcohol, and you know, I explained to her in an age-appropriate way. And like I said, my children know, and we've had little conversations about it, but I just let them know that if anything, they can always come to me. I'd rather them talk to me, and that they won't be able to get anything past me because I know all the signs. But yeah, so.
Did you ever feel like growing up when you did start that your parents knew about what you were doing?
I don't think so. So when I was 15, my mom had my little brother. So I was in high school, she had another baby, and I'm not saying that they didn't care about me anymore, but their focus was more on him, and I was going out on the weekends. And, you know, my parents always wanted to know where I was, but we didn't have cell phones, you know, so I had a pager, and I'd tell her I was going here, but I was really going there. And I did bring a friend home drunk once, and that was crazy, but they never really, I don't think they really knew what was going on because I had my son at 18 and moved out. So I did, like I said, I did do drugs and alcohol in high school, but I was able to graduate and all that stuff. So I think they were more focused on me being a young mother than realizing that I was into all that other stuff. And it didn't get as bad until after I was a mom, is when everything really started.
Are you comfortable speaking about the relationship with the father?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So was the father aware that you were using at the time when you were with him? He
got the brunt of it. I broke in when I left to go to my first detox. He let me come back a few times. And then I realized that relationship was just not healthy for either one of us or the children. I was completely just manipulating him and gaslighting him and making him feel crazy, and I was crazy, and I was no fun to be around. And when I left, I would break in and literally steal things. Like I stole his Xbox and his money and everything. And he never like called the cops on me, nothing, but he did take me to court and got emergency custody of the kids, and he had every right to, but I was so mad when he did that. But I know why he did now. But yeah, he got the brunt of it, and he tried to help me so many times. I mean, he took the kids to visit me until he just couldn't do it anymore, you know? It got to the point where it was just, he thought I was gonna die, and he was just like, why keep bringing the kids to see somebody that's not even gonna be in their life? Like, it was bad. So I think, and it took him a long time to trust me again. I remember when he first asked if I wanted to see the kids, it was 3 years later, and it was because he noticed that I was paying my child support, that my cell phone number hadn't changed, that my address hadn't changed, that I was being all these things that typical people do. It was not normal for me. I would have 17 different phone numbers and never paid my child support, and I lived at 17 different places, so he saw the consistency, and that's when he started realizing, okay, I think that she can start seeing them again. So
wow, that's truly amazing.
Yeah, but they're, one of the things that I remember that I'll never get out of my brain is when I used to visit my kids in the beginning before I didn't see them for the 3 years, is, when I was saying goodbye, my son would run to put his sneakers on because he wanted to come with me because he just didn't know when I was going to come back. And that's like something that's like stuck in me. It's hard. And I know that a lot of times, to move on, we have to forgive ourselves, but I have a tough time with forgiving myself for leaving my kids. That's one of the hard things for me.
Do you think they hold that in their hearts, or by any chance?
I definitely think they suffered. But I think that I've been back around for 6 years now. I think that we've been able to get to a place where they're comfortable with knowing that I'm going to be there. I just helped my son get his truck on the road, and I just paid for his prom, so I'm doing all that with them, and it's nice. But I think they're all right now. But
did you ever think that the drug addiction in the beginning would turn into anything more serious?
I mean, I knew about drugs are bad, but I never really thought I'd become a heroin addict. I was always like, I knew a few people that did it, and I would never do that. That's disgusting. But what I did know is like Percocets, which are opiates, like Vicodin, Percocets are all in the family of opiates, like morphine. It's kind of the morphine family. It's basically heroin. They're all in the same family. So when perks become so expensive, which they do, they're $30 for a pill, right? So you go, oh, well, heroin's cheaper and stronger. So that's how I made that shift. And I never, like I said, I never thought I would do heroin. And then I was like, well, I'll never put a needle in my mouth. I'll just sniff it. It's and then eventually you do that too. And it's one of those things that you never think is going to happen to you, and it does. And when you're already so far into the Percocet or the opiate habits, heroin doesn't seem so crazy because you're already like doing the drugs, you know what I mean? So before you get into drugs, you're like, I'll never do that. But when you're doing them, you're like, oh, it's it's not that bad. It's cheaper and it's stronger, and so that's kind of how it happens slowly.
You mentioned in the beginning that you thought it would make you a better mother because it made you more high functioning in the beginning. Can you talk about how in the beginning it leads to being high functioning and how that changes and becomes more destructive over time?
Sure. Yep. So in the beginning when I was getting high, it gave me kind of like a euphoria high where I would, I would clean the house and cook dinner and be a good mom and take them to the park and do all these things. But when you develop a habit and you don't have the drugs, you can't even get out of bed. So you're telling your kid, get your own cereal. No, we're not going to the park today. You get so easily irritated, and it's one of those. And then you're like, okay, well, how am I going to get money? And then you're trying to come up with these manipulative things. I used to, steal money and fill a CVS bag with products that I already had in my home and tell my kid's father, oh, yeah, I went shopping today. That's where the money went. So you come up with all these lies and living it's like living a double life. And then you become a terrible parent because you can't even get out of bed, and then you're yelling at your children for something that's not their fault, and it's sad. So then my focus is, okay, I got to get high again because I got to be a good mom again, and it turns into this vicious cycle of you're not being a good mom, you're being neglectful. You think you're being a good mom, but that's the addiction telling you that you're a good mom.
When you were after you took detoxes that you said may have worked for a little period of time, did you go to any other addictions or adopt anything else?
I mean, I like to say my drug of choice is more. I did everything. I did mostly gravitate towards the opiates, the heroin at the end, and alcohol. But I did, if cocaine was there, I'd do it. If, I smoked weed. Luckily, I never did meth. It wasn't around, but I probably would have. But I did do the cocaine. I did ecstasy. I mean, a lot. If it was there, I would have done it. But if it was like my money, I would have just bought heroin, because that's what my body was like addicted to. And when your withdrawals is like the flu on steroids, you're literally like sweating, hot, cold, throwing up, crapping your pants. I mean, it's ugly. It's really, really ugly. My legs would just kick. Restless legs, like they would just move on their own, and you think you're gonna die. It's one of the worst feelings in the world. And that's why a lot of drug addicts don't get clean, because going through that pain is almost unbearable. But I remember when I got clean for the last time, I had given birth to 3 children at that point. And I'm like, if you give birth to 3 kids, you can do this, And I had to just kind of give myself that boost. But I had a lot of support systems at that time. Like I said earlier, I went to BMC to ask for help, and they had a program called Project Respect, which helps addicted mothers, pregnant women, and they had a lot of resources. And I took my daughter to actually a mother and child program for 6 months to live with me, so I could have her in my custody. Because when I had my daughter, DCF did get involved, so I had to take her to a program with me. But there's a ton of resources and a ton of help out there. Finding them can be difficult, and I know I mentioned the recovery centers. They have a lot of resources. In the recovery coaches, I worked at Kearney Hospital, South Shore Hospital, and Quincy Hospital for a few years. It was a program called the Heart Team, and when people overdosed or came in for being drunk, picking up off the streets, homeless people, whatever, they would call us, and we were 24 hours, and we'd go in and get people treatment. So, yeah.
What did your support systems look like throughout this process?
I would recommend, if you think that someone is struggling, to ask them if they need to talk about anything, what's been going on, you've noticed some changes, without being on them, because it's one of those things that's shameful, right? You don't want people to know. And I know for me, I used to lie, because once I told you that I was using again, that means I had to stop, because now I'm making it like a thing, right? Like you're telling people, and now I got to stop. So it was hard to admit to it when people would ask you how you doing, but ask them if they would like to go to the hospital to get help, because like I said, one of the main things is feeling sick. If you go to the hospital, they'll help you feel more comfortable. Or when you're ready, let me know, and I can take you to the hospital. I can take you to detox. Offering that help without being so demanding, because it's scary. If it's someone's first time, if it's not one of their first times, then you can say, hey, how did you go about getting help last time? Is there anything I can do to help you, support you? What do you need from me? And let them know that you love them, because I think a lot of us feel unloved.
What do you wish that, if anything, that you could do towards the beginning in order to maybe stop before it became a long-term problem?
See, that's a tough question, because I think a lot of us, once you're at that point, it's already too late. Like once you start doing those types of drugs, I mean, you don't, and people don't just start off with heroin though, right? You start with drinking and then smoking weed or doing some cocaine, or like when you're doing drugs every day, it's obvious that you have a problem, you know what I mean? But I think once you get to the point where I did it, you don't even realize it's happening. You're taking pills, okay, I feel good, I'm super mom, so tomorrow I'm gonna do it again, and then you wake up 6 months later going, oh my God, I don't have money to get high today, and I'm sick, I can't even get out of bed. It literally happens so fast. So I think just educating yourself on drugs, and it's hard. That's a hard question to answer, because I don't even know how you could help somebody stop from when they're getting started. I mean, if it was my kids, if I noticed my kids were doing something, I'd probably step in, but I have the resources, so I would jump in as much as I could. But
do you remember the experience of the first time you took pills?
Yeah, I was working at Town Spa in Stoughton, and one of the girls that I used to hang out with, she had a chronic pain condition, so she was prescribed Percocets, and we'd go out on the weekends and she'd give them to us and stuff. And But I wasn't really, like I said, addicted to them then until I had my son, and I left the hospital with a bottle. And a lot of my friends were like, hey, can I get some of those perks that you got? And I'm like, why does everyone keep calling me and ask me for these things? And then I took more than what was prescribed, and then that's when I realized, oh, you can get really high off of these, and it feels really good. So that's how it started. And then when they were gone, my friend's like, hey, my boyfriend sells them or whatever. And it just, like I said, I woke up one day going, wow, like I'm really addicted to these pills. And yeah.
Are there any times, even 10 years later, that you still have really hard days and think about it?
As of now, no. But I would say the first 3 years were really hard. I'd still have the dreams, and because the obsession was, getting off the drugs and a detox is the easy part. It's that mental obsession when you get out of treatment and you're living in the real world again, and you're driving in the car and you're used to driving high, or you're in a certain room that you used to get high in, or bathrooms. When I moved back to Brockton 2 years ago, I went to a gas station. It was Gas Depot, and I pulled up to pump 4, and I started crying because that was a pump that I overdosed on with my. I pulled up to the pump 4, and where I overdosed, and so when I pulled up there, it was like this feeling of wow, like another full circle moment. I'm here. I'm almost 10 years clean, and I almost died in this spot. So there's certain things that do remind me of it, but it's less and less the more time that goes by. But I always, one of my main advices that I tell people is that like as long as you're still breathing, or if a loved one is still breathing, there's still hope. Because I accepted that I was a drug addict, and I accepted that I was going to die, and I did not think I was going to make it to 30. I just didn't. I thought my kids were better off without me. I didn't feel like I deserved anything. I was ready to just end it. I was so broken. And then when I got pregnant with my daughter, what got me to get clean the last time is I said, if I have this child and I lose her, if I lose another kid, I'm gonna kill myself. I couldn't live with that. I didn't see my kids for, at that point it was like 2 years, because it was still another year until I saw them again. I knew that I wouldn't do it, and I had no right bringing another kid into this world. But I'll tell you, I'm so grateful that I did, because she saved my life. And then that's another thing that I suffer with is I don't want my kids, my boys, to think that I love her more because I got clean for her. It was all of it. It was not seeing them and having her, and all of it, all the pain, everything that I went through. It was that moment that it all came together, and I was like, you know what? I do deserve to live. I'm gonna have this child, and I'm gonna get clean, and I'm gonna see my kids again, and she's gonna meet her brothers, and I refuse to let all that pain be for nothing. So now, and that's why I started working in this field.
Do you remember what it was like to turn 30?
Oh my God, yeah. It was such an emotional birthday for me, because like I said, I kept telling myself I'm not gonna make it to 30. I would tell people I'm not gonna make it to 30. I know I'm not gonna make it to 30, and then I turned 30, and then I turned 31, and now I'm 37. But yeah, it was crazy.
That's amazing.
I was grateful to be 30, believe it or not. Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit more about the physical aspects? Like, did it affect appearance, abilities, physical strength, anything like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was at the height of my addiction. I was like 90 pounds. I have a lot of acne scars on my face from picking my face. I have my teeth rotted out. I have no back teeth. Luckily, there's not like. I'm so grateful that I didn't end up with a serious illness. I didn't end up with, AIDS or hepatitis C. But I used with people that did have Hep C, and I assumed I had it. I told the doctors when I had my daughter that I had it, because she had needles with people, but I luckily did not get it. Thank God. But that's a huge risk factor of sharing needles with people, is you're going to get sick. But mostly it was just like my teeth and my skin that were affected. And when I overdosed those 3 times, luckily someone was there to save my life before it caused any serious damage. My husband actually saved my life twice. Wow. Out of the 3 times, yeah.
The husband is the father of the children?
Is my daughter's father. Is who I'm married to, yep. He's clean too. I met him in detox.
Wow.
Yeah.
What does he do for work, if anything?
He works at Home Depot, but he's doing good too. He took a little bit longer than me, but he's a couple months behind me. But so he'll have 10 years after this year too. But
did you have any friendships or acquaintances that you feel fueled the addiction? It was a back and forth kind of competitive nature?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think when you become a drug addict like I did, it was more of like I wanted to do it myself because I wasn't going to share with anybody. And then when I met my husband, we did use together for 2 years. But what really affected me was the friendships I had before the drugs and how people didn't talk to me anymore. There was a group of friends that I had that I thought I was going to be friends with them forever. And I tell myself if it was the other way around and it was them, I would never have turned my back on them. And I can't believe that they turned their back on me. But then I have to realize, like, I was not a nice person, and I have a lot of lapses in memory of how I was back then. I don't know if I did anything to hurt them, but I honestly think that I would have tried harder if it was the other way around. But I can't live through life expecting people to be like how I am. But it really hurt me, and it still hurts me that I don't see them or talk to them anymore. But yeah.
That can be very difficult.
Yeah, it's sad, but the people that matter are still in my life, and that's
amazing.
Yeah.
You said you didn't feel like yourself, and you feel like you had two different personalities, or you were in two different bodies. Mm-hmm. When you didn't feel like yourself, did you feel any part of yourself being like, who is this person?
Sometimes, yeah. Like when I would go to treatment, detox or a halfway house, and you start getting some clarity, and you're looking at yourself like, what are you doing? But then you get so angry, and it's really a process of getting clean. I'll tell you, I've done it. I used to call myself a chronic relapser because I would go to treatment, get a couple months here and there, relapse. But I never really gave myself an honest shot till like this time, because I still would either drink or smoke weed or do other things that weren't my drug of choice and tell myself that I was clean, But I remember there was a few times I looked at myself going, what are you doing, But life seemed so far away, like getting my kids back, and like I just didn't have the patience for it. Everything seemed just so out of reach. But once they slowly started coming back, and I was patient, because my dad kept telling me, be patient. And finally, this little thing started coming, and like I said, I'm not willing to lose that stuff today. And I've been around people that have gotten high, because working in the hospitals, with overdoses, people have had drugs on them and stuff, and I think when the fentanyl came in, I started overdosing at the end of my addiction because fentanyl was coming in, and I think that has a lot to do with why I'm clean too, because I'm terrified of that. Like, heroin, we weren't dying like people are now, unless you like mixed it with benzos or alcohol, or you did too much. I know people that were using drugs for 10, 20 years, and they're dead because of the fentanyl. They used heroin for so long, and the fentanyl came in, and it's just killing people. It's so strong that I think that has a lot to do with why I was terrified to relapse, because I didn't do drugs because I wanted to die. I did drugs because I wanted to get high, and I think that. So I'm kind of grateful that they got like that, because I don't like to say like, oh, would I still be clean or not, but I don't know.
With your story about going to treatment
Mm-hmm.
and speaking with other people towards the beginning, and their stories being worse or taking harder drugs than yours, did you ever feel like your story didn't matter as much, or did you feel invalidated in any way of you going for help for your problems?
No, I mean, like I said, when I went to detox, I didn't think I was as bad as everybody else. I don't think I took it as serious as I should have. But other than that, no. I wish I listened to them, though, when people were generally saying, like, you need to go to further treatment or you're going to be back. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm not going to be like you. I'm not going to stick a needle in my arm. Like, there's no way. And they're like, you need to get help. Like, because I was like, it's not that bad. Like, my dad told me I had to come here because I'm taking, but I'm not that bad. Like, I'm only sniffing heroin. I'm only taking pills. Like, I'm not doing anything that crazy. But, that's that addiction, lying to yourselves, And I think that one thing I would tell people, too, is just try to, do listen to advice and give yourself a shot and try, because you never know when it's going to be your time to do it. Because even if you go to detox for somebody else, like let's say someone goes to detox because they're doing it for their kids, they can do that and still end up staying for themselves. So, I always tell people, yeah, you don't want to go to get help for somebody else, but if that's what gets you in the door, then that's great. Just make sure you stay for you.
What is your advice for other people struggling with something like this?
obviously educate yourself, because I don't know if I knew how bad heroin would be, if I saw people on it, if it would have changed my mind or not. But also, like, keeping things bottled in is like the worst thing you can do for yourself. And you should always have someone that you can reach out to and talk to. I mean, even if you go to a hospital, it's confidential and you can go in and talk to somebody. There's always someone willing there to help you. Addiction is like a pandemic right now, so there's so much help out there. But it's hard to tell, somebody like what will work for them. It's kind of one of those things that sometimes people have to see for themselves. You can't really stop somebody, because no one's ever like, oh, I think I want to do heroin. Like, it's never like that. It's always, once you're to heroin, it's too late. You've already done everything else, and a lot of times you don't even see it coming, because you can literally get high on heroin a couple of times and your body's addicted. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming here today and sharing your story and being so open and willing to share the whole journey. Truly, you have touched my heart and the hearts of so many other people. Truly, it's a very hard thing to do, to speak about your own troubles in such a public range, and how selfless of you that is to really share your story.
Yep. Thank you for having me.